Hello, my name is Rick Hernandez, and I'm from Nevada County Cooperative Extension, and I am for the soils because it is the foundation of all our fruits and vegetables.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm Jeff Ishee, and we're going to get to our podcast, which is a little bit different this time. We're going to get to our podcast in just a moment, but I wanted to quickly remind everyone of a brand new blog entry at our website, forthesoil.org. Just go to that website. It's the digit 4, thesoil.org, and in the upper right-hand corner on the menu bar, you'll see the blog button there, and just click on that, and there's a brand new resource. It's called Graze 300. It's a program of Virginia Cooperative Extension whose mission is to enable Virginia farmers to achieve 300 days of livestock grazing by facilitating better pasture management and environmental stewardship. Lots of good information there. Once again, that's at our website, forthesoil.org. Click on blog, and there you will see the link to Graze 300. Lots of very useful information. Now let's get to today's podcast. Welcome, everyone, to For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee, and joining us today, our co-host, Eric Bendfeldt with Virginia Cooperative Extension, Community Viability, as well as Mary Sketch Bryant with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, and also a special guest, Sarah Koth. Sarah works behind the scenes here at For the Soil, a Conversation. She is a writer, a content creator, very passionate about agriculture and food policy issues. And I'll let you know right up front, today's podcast is going to be totally different from what we normally do, where we focus on one particular topic and we have special guests on the program. But today is kind of a getting to know you. We ran into some of our listeners at a recent farm activity, and they said, we'd like to know a little bit more about Eric and Mary and Jeff and who you guys are, our host for the Soil, a Conversation. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. And Sarah, let's start with you. You're a content creator. All I know about you really is you are a graduate of James Madison University, and you certainly have a passion about soil health and about food policy issues. Tell us who you are.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Mary and Eric, for inviting me onto the podcast as well. So I am a double Duke. So I graduated from James Madison University in 2018 and then again in 2020. I've got a master's in environmental communication and advocacy. And I came to soil health in a really roundabout way. I really started with hunger relief. So I was really interested in getting food into the hands of people who either had run into an emergency or had run into systemic structural issues in our community. But at the same time, I was trying to think, well, let's dig deeper. How do these systemic issues really need to be tackled? How do they need to be addressed? And so it's not just a Band-Aid solution. So in a roundabout way, I came to the field of agriculture and started learning about the issues and solutions that really intersect with so many different complex environmental things. So from watersheds to food access to nature conservancy, all of that stuff really, for some reason, starts and ends with soil. So it's been really cool to join the conversation. I've only joined the soil health conversation in the past year, but really continuing to learn and learn about the technical things, but also really dive into the stories behind the soil. And
well, speaking of stories, I wanted to thank you for all of the content you're creating for our website. And listeners, by the way, that web address is forthesoil.org. It's the digit 4, thesoil.org. And in the upper right-hand corner on the menu bar, you'll see an area where it says blog. And Sarah, that is your area of expertise. What are some of the recent topics that you've covered on the blog?
Yeah, so some of the blog topics, they've really ranged, which has been really fun. We've gotten to talk about food justice and soil health on the blog, really a throwback to Karen Washington's episode of the podcast. And we've talked about, soil health tips. So those are going to definitely be coming back out in the spring of different soil health tips that you can do in your own garden.
Well, welcome to the podcast. And once again, thank you for everything you're doing for our organization. Mary Sketch Bryant, a lot of folks know you. You are all over the place during farm festival season and when we have conventions and so forth. People see a lot of Mary Sketch Bryant. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Well, and similar to Sarah, it's actually a little roundabout as well. My background really is in actually environmental studies and natural resource conservation, but specifically with a focus in social sciences, what they call the human dimensions of conservation. So what is driving, what are the values and behaviors that are driving how we interact with the environment? And so that's really what brought me to agriculture, is because I saw how natural those intersections were when you think about community well-being, environmental well-being, economic well-being, and just how deep and intersectional that is. And so came into rural community development that way, and then really was interested in the agricultural components of that. And so was lucky to jump into this work with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, although very much learning every day about the nitty-gritty of soil science. And so like bringing that human perspective to it, in that coalition building, network development, but am lucky to be surrounded by folks who know a lot more than me about the actual soil.
Well, thank you for everything that you do for this effort for the soil, and specifically for the podcast For the Soil, a Conversation. Eric Bendfeldt, you are a very interesting man. We met more than 20 years ago, Eric, on a boat in the Chesapeake Bay. We were exploring, what was it, Tangier Island?
Yes.
Yeah, and we've known each other for a number of years. And tell us about your background and what you do with Cooperative Extension.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and it's good to be here with Mary and Sarah. A little bit about my background. I actually have a degree in history from James Madison University along with Sarah, but then my wife, Mary, and we worked and volunteered with Mennonite Central Committee, which is a relief, peace, and development organization of the Mennonite Church. And we actually lived and worked in Tanzania, East Africa. And that was probably the time that really became aware of soil quality, soil health, the need for sort of multidimensional approaches to agriculture, as well as food security issues. And then came back to school and studied agronomy and forest soils at Virginia Tech, and been fortunate to have very many mentors who are interested in soil quality and soil health.
And your office, I believe, is in Harrisonburg. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm at the Northwest District office here in Harrisonburg, and the first 6 years of my career, I worked out of the Rockingham County Extension Office as an environmental science extension agent.
Well, I wanted to keep this informal and kind of unrehearsed, unscheduled. I wanted each of us to be able to ask the others a question. And my question to each of you is, obviously you're interested in soil health. Do you have a garden? Sarah?
I'm starting to plan my balcony garden. Yes. And I've got my vermicomposter in my apartment, so I'm all ready.
I see vermicompost. We could spend an entire episode on just that one word. A lot of people don't know what vermicompost is. Can you explain?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a method of composting with worms. So there's a lot of different designs and ways to do it, but pretty much just throwing in food scraps, some brown material, and having your worms turn it into compost.
Mary, do you have a garden?
So I feel a little busted because we have worked really hard to have a thriving garden and realized that we just have way too much shade in our yard. But what we've had some luck with and are having fun experimenting with now is really shade tolerant native species. as landscaping. So have been planted a lot of those last fall, and I'm excited to see, and all perennials, and excited to see them come back this spring. So hoping that that is the solution to our inability to grow too many vegetables right now.
How about you, Eric?
Yes, my wife and I have a small garden, and I was just noticing that some garlic bulbs were sprouting, and we also have 8 blueberry bushes that I take care of, and always look forward to taking care of them and also picking them and freezing them.
Eric, it'll be your turn next to ask each of us a question. But before we do that, I guess I should give a little bit of my own background. I came to the podcast, I guess, from the technical side. Background is in radio and television, and producing radio programs for On the Farm Radio, which is a syndicated farm report. Basically, when I get up every morning, I do 11 different farm reports for 92 radio stations all across the eastern United States, from South Georgia to North Vermont, as far west as Kentucky and Michigan, primarily though in the Mid-Atlantic region, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. And I do have a passion for gardening. It is something that my dad taught me to do, and taught me the importance of gardening. And he taught me about the importance of soil health. And I learned a lot from my dad, and I'm glad to pass that on to my kids. So that's what I bring to the podcast. All right, Eric, your turn to ask a question of each of us.
Okay. I guess the question for each of you would be, is there a specific aha moment in your life or career where you really realize how important soil and care of land and care of natural resources or have dawned on you? You can start with Mary.
First thing I thought of, and I feel like there have been several, but soon after college, I actually moved out to rural California in the Sierra Nevada mountains to do, well, it started as a forest restoration job. And then a week before I was moving out there, the entire community burned in a wildfire. So it turned into a post-wildfire rehabilitation position. And I think it really made me realize, so that region, even though it was extremely rural, provided all of the water for the East Bay, so Oakland, California, a lot of really large cities in California. And so just that innate connection, whether you're rural, urban, and that the natural resources we're so tied to the well-being of our resources. And so the erosion that was caused from that fire was directly impacting the water supply downstream of thousands of residents. And so having to advocate for that and educate the public on that connection was really helpful for myself.
And Sarah?
Yes, I've had a couple aha moments, and most of them took place on educational farms. So I've gotten to work with farms like Project Grows up in, I think, in Verona, and Vine and Fig, the Living Sustainable Center in Harrisonburg, and working with those groups and being on field trips with students who are plunging their hands in the soil, digging out food, and then tasting it immediately. I thought, what's on that food? So I've had wonderful experiences with educational farmers who are really passionate about connecting the dots for students in particular to have nutritious, healthy food. We have to have nutritious, healthy soil.
Well, Eric, I guess my aha moment in soil health was a little over 25 years ago when I decided to at least earn a significant portion of my income. I did not want to be a full-time farmer, but I did want to earn some income from a small piece of land, and I began market gardening. And I learned very quickly that if I'm going to make my living from the earth, I've got to treat the earth with respect, and I've got to put more in than I'm taking out. So that was a kind of an aha moment on me. I learned how to make compost on a commercial scale, and I learned all about soil testing. You don't know what you got until you test it. So that was kind of my aha moment in soil health. Mary, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, Yeah, I think my question would be currently, because I know for myself at least it changes all the time, your favorite resource related to soil or care for the land, whether it's a book, a podcast, a video. And we'll start with you, Eric.
I think most recently, I think there's several books, but reading John Sticka's Soil Owner's Manual and how to both build and maintain soil health. John really talks about the importance of soil biology, and my graduate research was actually in mineland reclamation, and so part of that was looking at the soil organic matter and how do you reestablish nutrient cycles. And part of my research, I realized that soil biology is really critical for soil chemistry and the physical properties. So reading John's book inspired me again to think about sort of the biological processes and specifically the carbon cycle and such.
How about you, Jeff?
I guess it would be my accumulated library of books that I've collected over the years. When I was in the Navy, I used to read a book a day, and I carried on that habit after I left the military and got involved with agriculture. And some of my favorite authors concerning soil health are Wendell Berry, Gene Logsdon, oh gosh, Joel Salatin. I could name so many people that have inspired me to always be thinking about building that soil. As I said before, you can't continue to take away all those nutrients without putting some nutrients back in through carbon, through composting, through fertility management. There's just so much involved. So I guess that's my best resource is my library of books.
Wonderful. And Sarah?
A couple different ones come to mind, and they're a little bit less technical. So coming from the human story side of it, and really some of the permaculture origins, the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, that has been a huge inspiration to my entire environmental perspective. And I'm currently getting to read the book Farming While Black by Leah Penniman. And so that has been an incredible resource as well.
All right, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes remaining. So Sarah, do you have a question for each of us?
I would love to know a brief memory that you all have as when you were young with soil.
I'll start with that one. I talked about gardening with my dad. I remember specifically, I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and we were discussing tools in the garden. He had bought a new hoe, and he thought it was the best hoe that had ever been built. It was called a stirrup hoe. But anyway, I digress. But we were talking about tools in the garden, and I said, well, Dad, what is your most important tool in the garden? And he pointed to the chair next to the garden. He said, that is my most important tool because that is where I sit and I think and I observe and I consider what all is going on in front of me. So the most important tool in my garden is my chair. So that's my answer to that question. That was a long time ago.
I think mine would be, so neither of my parents had a huge green thumb. And if they listen to this, they wouldn't be offended by me saying that. Although my mom, every year, we also had a very shady yard growing up, but we had a sunny porch. And so she always grew several container plants on the porch, and her favorite was basil. And she just grew a vast amount of basil. And so I just have a lot of memories of going out on the porch, and there's such a strong smell associated with basil. So walking out and having that smell all summer long and working with her to plant the basil and then making lots and lots of batches of pesto every year.
I think for myself, Sarah, it's whenever I think about my childhood, I particularly think about my grandmother Bendfeldt, she was quite a cook and had a very large garden. But even when she was older, though, that going to her house and different like elderberry jam or pies that she would bake. And so I guess when I think about soil, I also think about culture and conversation in the sense of community, and how do we continue to grow and cultivate that.
Well, we're running short of time, less than a minute to go in this podcast. And this has been a fun podcast, getting to know you. And I hope that our listeners have gotten to know us a little bit better. When they hear our voices, they'll know a little bit about our background and about who all is involved in this effort that we call For the Soil, a Conversation. And I would like to thank our listeners for subscribing to the podcast. We now have many more subscribers than we originally thought we would have. So thank you for committing yourself. And speaking of committing yourself, there is a pledge that you can take at our website, forthesoil.org. And right there at the menu bar at the top of the page, just take that pledge. And it kind of shows to us and to the world that you are serious when it comes to improving soil health, whether it be in your garden, whether it be on your 500-acre farming operation, whether it be on your balcony garden. Thank you so much for being involved with the podcast, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next one. Thanks for listening. For the Soil, a Conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. And if you should have a specific question about soil health, just contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of Mr. Ruiz. All rights reserved. For the Soil, a Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.